You ever get to the end of a day or maybe even a whole week and just think to yourself, where did all that time go? It's such a terrible feeling, right? That little pang of regret knowing you had all these plans but you ended up doing something else? Well, what if I told you the secret to avoiding that regret, to actually living the life you want, is all about learning how to become indistractable?
But that begs a huge question. Why do we get in our own way so much? I mean, let's be honest. Most of us know what we should be doing. We know we should exercise or eat better or focus on that big project at work. The information isn't the problem. The real issue is that we just don't do what we know we should. So what's really going on there?
Now, the easy answer, the one we all jump to, is to blame technology. It's the phone's fault. It's the notifications, the endless social media feeds, all those pings and dings that are constantly demanding our attention. It feels like our brains are being hijacked, for sure. But that's not the real story. The number one source of our distraction is actually much, much closer to home. Okay, check this out, because this is staggering. When researchers looked into it, they found that all those external triggers, the pings, the dings, the rings from our devices, they only account for about 10% of our distractions. 10%. That means a full 90% comes from within us. That's right. 9 times out of 10, the call is coming from inside the house.
This just flips the whole script, doesn't it? I mean, if our phones and computers are only responsible for a tiny little sliver of our distraction problem, what in the world is making up that other massive 90%? What is this powerful force inside of us that keeps pulling us off track?
Well, to understand that, we have to totally reframe the problem. And this brings us to a really radical idea. Time management has nothing to do with managing your time. It's all about managing your pain.
And that 90% culprit? It has a name. It's called an internal trigger. Basically, these are just uncomfortable feelings that we'd rather not feel. You know, things like boredom, loneliness, anxiety, feeling insecure. Think about it. The second you get bored with a task, what do? You reach for your phone. The moment you feel anxious about a tough email, you suddenly have an urge to go check the fridge. Distraction is, at its core, an escape from discomfort.
This is literally the engine that drives almost everything we do. From overeating when we feel lonely to endlessly scrolling when we're stressed, almost all of our behaviors are driven by this fundamental desire to get away from an uncomfortable sensation. So getting distracted isn't some kind of character flaw. It's just a poorly planned strategy for dealing with discomfort.
And here's the big takeaway from all this. The battle for your attention, it's not going to be won with a fancier calendar or a new to-do list app. It's won when we learn how to handle these internal triggers in a healthier, more productive way.
Okay, so if the problem is coming from inside us, how in the world do we fix it? Well, the good news is there's a clear, actionable plan, a practical 4-step solution to help you become indistractable.
So here's the roadmap. First, and most importantly, you have to master your internal triggers. Then you make time for traction. That's the opposite of distraction. Step 3 is to hack back all those external triggers we talked about. And finally, you use something called PACS to lock in your good intentions. Now, all 4 of these are important, but everything, and I mean everything, starts with that very first step.
And that's because it's the foundation for the whole system. If you don't get this part right, the other steps are just, well, they're almost impossible. Mastering your internal triggers is the bedrock that everything else gets built on.
So how do you actually do it? How do you master that sudden urge to get distracted? Well, here is an incredibly simple but shockingly powerful technique you can literally start using today. It's called the 10-minute rule.
The rule is this: you can give in to any distraction you want. Go ahead, check social media, eat that cookie, watch that YouTube video. You can do it, but not right now. You just have to wait 10 minutes. That's it. This tiny pause is a complete game changer. It breaks that automatic cycle of feeling a bad feeling and immediately reacting. It reminds you that you are in the driver's seat. It proves you're not powerless, and it starts building that crucial muscle of impulse control.
And what this does over time is it creates a huge mindset shift. See, a distractible person feels anxiety or boredom, and their first instinct is to look for an escape hatch. But an indistractable person, they feel that exact same discomfort, but they learn how to harness it. They learn to use it as rocket fuel, channeling that energy into the focused work they actually want to do.
All right, this brings us to the final piece of the puzzle. Because a huge part of taking back control of your attention is about dismantling the myths, the limiting beliefs that keep us feeling stuck and powerless in the first place. I'm sure you've heard this one before, right? The idea of ego depletion. The theory that our willpower is kind of like a phone battery that just drains throughout the day, and by the evening, we're totally defenseless against distractions. It's a really convenient excuse, but is it actually true? Well, the research here is absolutely fascinating. When other scientists tried to replicate those original studies on ego depletion, they couldn't. What they found was that the only people who seemed to run out of willpower were the ones who believed it was a limited resource in the first place. It's a total self-fulfilling prophecy. Your belief literally creates your reality.
And this leads to a really powerful, maybe even challenging idea from this quote. A mistake repeated more than once is a decision. Look, getting distracted once, that's a mistake. It happens to all of us. But letting yourself get pulled away by the same thing day after day after day, at some point, that stops being a mistake and it starts being a choice.
Because here's the bottom line. Your focus isn't being stolen from you. In many ways, it's being given away. Your attention is the most valuable asset you have. It's how you experience your job, your relationships, your entire life. So the only real question left to ask is, who's in control of it?